Welcome, FinTech Talkers. Today we're talking about something that's quietly rewriting the banking stack, a fully regulated digital asset bank built on blockchain rails. Here's the thesis. We're moving from a features on legacy rails to programmable money on increasingly on chain infrastructure. Tokenization is the means, infrastructure is the story. Eventually, programmable money can think and choose with agents. Welcome to our series on the new financial fabric. This episode of FinTech Talk is brought to you by, FinTech Talk. We've launched a new narrative studio creation service for FinTech, AI, and crypto teams who want to define the future of finance, not just to react to it. Over 4 to 6 weeks, we interview your team, run a positioning workshop, and then turn your story into a full asset stack. A deep dive FinTech Talk episode, a long form Substack piece, an executive 2-pager, an infographic that shows where you sit in the new financial fabric, and a social pack your team can ship immediately. If you're a founder or operator, head to meet.fintechtalk.co. That's meet.fintechtalk.co to schedule a narrative studio scoping call. If you're a PR or a marketing agency, you can join our FinTech Talk agency affiliate program and earn referral commissions for bringing your clients into this series. And if you're a VC, a venture capitalist, or a corporate innovation leader, ask us about the VC plus corporate innovation blueprint to pair your fund thesis with real-world pipeline creation for your portfolio companies. Learn more and get in touch at fintechtalk@substack.com. Now back to the show. Welcome to another edition of the FinTech Talk Show, where we unpack how the financial system is being rewired, from slow batch-based rails to programmable real-time infrastructure. I'm your host, Patty. I've been saying this for a while. The big story isn't another app, it's infrastructure. We're moving from legacy cores and card rails to programmable value, always-on settlement, and soon AI-driven money flows. Today's conversation is about one of the clearest examples of that shift. My guest is Patrick Gerhart, President of Banking Operations at Telcoin. Telcoin has just made U.S. banking history by winning approval to launch a regulated digital asset bank and issue a dollar-based digital cash instrument, while also raising a significant new round to capitalize that vision. Patrick, congratulations and welcome to the FinTech Talk Show.
Thank you very much, Patty. I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome. Thanks for joining. And excited for this one. Let's dive in. But before we get into Telcoin and what you're doing with new charter and the new round of capital, tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to this journey.
Yeah, my name is Patrick Gerhart. I'm President of Banking Operations here at Telcoin. I will be Bank President of the Telcoin Digital Asset Bank here. Um, I am by trade a traditional banker, if you will. Was a banker for quite some time before I came on board here to Telcoin. What got me interested, just a little bit on kind of how I even got here is back in 2021, the Nebraska Financial Innovation Act came through the Nebraska legislature, which we'll probably get to more here in a little bit. But I was, again, traditional banker here in the state of Nebraska, was monitoring it. I was part of a banking trade association here in Nebraska on their government relations committee. And, we looked at it. A lot of bankers were very curious about it, skeptical in some aspects, since crypto was still fairly new. And fairly early on, once I realized kind of understanding the idea of the blockchain, not just crypto itself, but the use of the blockchain, that online general ledger that's is basically untouchable once it's built. Once I realized that and the implications of what it could be used, not just in the banking system, but the U.S. financial system as a whole, I showed support for it. And when the time came to help build the banking structure up for Telcoin, they reached out to me, seeing if I'd be interested in helping, get boots on the ground and get this operation started up. So there's kind of a brief synopsis of why I'm here, how I got here, and my interest in this whole endeavor.
Gotcha, gotcha. So recovering banker, but very close to kind of the policy side of it. And I know Congressman Mike Flood. I think you know him well. He was very instrumental in the Genius Act, and he's been instrumental in some of these things that's going shaping kind of policy around crypto. So you had that background, so that definitely helps quite a bit.
Mhm. Yeah, it does. It definitely has. I think that was part of the interest. But before I got into finance and banking, I was in public policy and politics for almost a decade before that. So I had background on kind of the inner workings on how to make these things happen and what goes into it, which I think's helped me considerably since I came on board with Telcoin.
Okay, so if you get time down in the show, maybe we'll talk a little bit about that public policy. I know there's some stuff coming down the pipe, like the
Mhm.
Clarity Act and stuff. So if you have time, but we need to talk about Telcoin first. Um, in the introduction, anything besides the work, any hobbies, any passions, Patrick, before we jump into Telcoin?
Well, the last few years, I've definitely spent a majority of my time here. Other than that, most of my time is spent with my family, chasing my kids around, coaching sports. I'm fairly involved in the community here in Norfolk, Nebraska. I'm on a few boards and whatnot. So it's basically family and community involvement for me for outside of work. So
Sounds good. Which sport do you coach?
I help coach my son's basketball, baseball, and flag football.
Oh yeah, flag football. I hear is I play a lot of pickleball now, and I call it an emerging
Nice.
sport. Yeah, I play competitive pickleball, and but flag football I hear is just taken off, meaning it's just going to become as popular as NFL or football in some sense.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, isn't flag football come to the Olympics here fairly soon?
I hear that. Yeah.
I think that the NFL is pushing pretty hard for that, but that's good. But outside of that, I played a little pickleball, I play tennis, I play golf, and I spend whatever extra free time I have at the gym. So
Awesome.
just trying to stay healthy at this point in life.
Awesome. Thank you. So let's pivot to Telcoin,
Mhm.
and maybe starts with some basics. For listeners who may know Telcoin as the telco crypto project from a few years ago, what is Telcoin in 2025? How do you describe the company and what you're building now?
So Telcoin in 2025, would you like me to give you a little background on Telcoin?
Sure.
Just to start things out, so Telcoin was started back in 2017, where it developed its own wallet and what I say traditional stablecoin, the Tel. If you're interested and want to go out and buy it, and it was going well, kind of riding the crypto wave during that time. And our CEO, Paul Nooner, started looking at coming into the United States, specifically Wyoming, with their state with their crypto legislation that was going through at that time.
Hmm.
And he reached out, just was talking to his college roommate from Notre Dame, then state senator Mike Flood, now as you mentioned, Congressman Mike Flood, and Mike, was kind of telling him about his ideas, what he was kind of thought the future was of this. And Mike was basically like, why don't you do this here in Nebraska? Let's see what we can do. So Mike Flood put together the legislation, the Nebraska Financial Innovation Act, to make it happen. Did something with my experience I thought was pretty amazing is that he passed that legislation through on the first try. Usually something
Wow.
that new and innovative, especially in the financial world, could take a few years, at least a couple years to kind of get everybody on board, the bankers, the policymakers, especially with something this new. But Mike Flood had the vision and he had the drive to make it happen, and he did. So in 2021, this passed. And with Telcoin's help, of course, helping shape the legislation. And during that time, like I said earlier, that's when I was still a traditional banker. And when they started building up, they needed somebody on the ground. And the past few years, I spent pretty much almost all my time putting together that business plan, the application for the department, just so you guys have a somewhat of an understanding. The application is basically a de novo bank charter. In
Mm.
a lot of ways, just with the effort and the lifts you have to do. This is not an easy process. Not to push anybody away, but just to give you an idea of how the Department of Banking here in Nebraska is treating this. In a lot of ways, they are treating us like a traditional bank. So how are things looking right now for us? We're moving that model from our original model, which is still there and still will be there, but branching off into the banking realm, specifically the digital asset banking realm, which we are allowed to do here in Nebraska. So really, 2025 is just kind of the start of our next phase. Basically making 2026 kind of a big year for not just for us, but for the industry as a whole.
Yeah. So I know some of the big fintech players like Square and Figure and SoFi and others have gotten into the charter kind of to kind of manage maybe some of the cost of capital, cost of deposits, and things like that. And but only when they had scale. You kind of trailblazed. You're still making you're getting bigger, but you're still kind of early. Although you've been around since 2017, but you decided to go the charter route.
Mhm.
And so, can you walk us through what this charter actually lets Telcoin do and why you choose this path instead of just issuing a token or staying as a non-bank fintech?
So one of the main reasons we went the charter route, at least with the banking area, is that I've always viewed things as the best way for the American public, your average Joe, the non-crypto person, people who've been into it, to get into crypto is through an institution like the US banking industry. Okay. So it's not just some startup, which there's a lot of good ones out there, but there's also some that probably don't always have their ducks in a row. So when you're an everyday average consumer here in the United States and you want to get into crypto, specifically stable coins, which we can get into more later, you want peace of mind of safety and soundness within all of that, and doing that through the United States banking industry, specifically in our case the Nebraska Department of Banking and Finance, which will regulate us. We are going to be under a regulator. It's not just, we're not out there on our own trying to figure things out, trying to stay within the SEC or whoever, treasury, whoever we think might be under us. We know exactly who our regulator is, so we can promote that through our materials and to our customers, because I mean, in a way, we can't, we have the rules and guidance to move forward, to tell us how to operate. And I think for the general American public, like I said at the beginning, that is basically just peace of mind to get into this industry. And that's a major reason why we think this is a great way to go. Another way reason is, once we get into the banking industry, it allows us into other rails, forms of payment that we can utilize through other partner banks, to get our customers on board, to bring their customers on board, and to utilize it on the blockchain.
Very interesting. That's very kind of futuristic thinking, right? Most fintechs kind of look at banking regulations or dealing with the regulatory side as more of a burden. And but you are seeing it kind of orienting almost from a customer adoption perspective, that the more aligned with regulators and existing banking system you are, and not seen as a kind of a wild, wild west, if you let me use that kind of crypto libertarian kind of offering, it'll just increase adoption. So that's kind of your primary thesis.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, that you hit the nail on the head. Like, it's the best way to get people on board. And you're right. People don't like regulation. People, don't usually care for regulators, but they're here. And to properly be adopted, you need to run towards regulation. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to not only run towards it, we're trying to help shape it, help the regulators and policymakers understand this new ecosystem, this new type of payment rails that are out there, because without that, you're not going to have that cohesion, and it's going to be a lot harder for that adaptation, not just for the industry, but for your everyday customer.
Yeah. So one of the themes that I've been writing and talking about is this new financial infrastructure. So let me kind of pivot to that. So on one side, we've got traditional banks with legacy cores and strict regulation. On the other side, we have crypto native systems with speed and programmability, but not always the guardrails.
Mhm.
Telcoin's basically saying, let's be a real bank, but wire the bank itself to modern rails. From a big picture perspective, how do you see the financial infrastructure, not just what Telcoin's doing, but the broader financial infrastructure changing over the next decade? And where does Telcoin sit in that transition?
I think what you're going to see happening, and especially after this past year, if you asked me a year ago in 2024, I might have had a different answer. But with all the pushing and progress, I should say, going on, specifically like in Washington, D.C., which brings in the federal realm into this area, I think you're going to see a lot more adapters, at least on the traditional banking side, getting involved, trying to figure out their own ways of getting onto the blockchain, utilizing stablecoins, having their customers utilize it in a safe and sound manner. And, I think we are, as you kind of said, we're kind of the trailblazers on that. I know a lot of banks, with not just within the state of Nebraska, but in the region across the country, are watching to see how we're doing it, to kind of see what modes we're using, how our back end works, how we're getting people on and off, to really for them to kind of understand how that will work within their own current ecosystem. Because that current one, yeah, it is older, it is traditional. The core systems aren't necessarily set up for it, but we're kind of in the process right now of kind of merging those two worlds, and we're very close to just launching our product so you can actually see the day-to-day operations. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to traditional banking, and that's what I know, so that's what I'm going to speak about, it's a lot harder to adapt new types of fintech into your system. And anymore, most banks have multiple types of fintech partners out there to make their products available, to give the services they need for their customers. And this new product, which is stablecoins, is out there. And is it necessarily going to take over the industry? No, not necessarily, at least not right away, but it's going to be another product out there which is safe, it's efficient, and it's a lot cheaper than other modes of transferring money across different banks and different platforms.
Yeah. So let's get more concrete. I want to get into what a digital asset bank, when you say that, what it means. But before we go there, I know you brought it up, Washington D.C., and you have kind of the public policy background before Telcoin, a little bit of that, and we talked about Congressman Mike Flood and what the administration, the Trump administration's kind of doing with the passage of the Genius Act. Obviously, it was bipartisan and a lot of people involved. Um, Traditionally, if I kind of step back, right, financial services innovation or other innovations in the US has been mostly market driven, right? So startups do it, incumbents do it, and the legislators come after some time to say, okay, yeah, no, we need to create some guardrails. The 1033 is a classic example, right? While Europe did its PSD2 and
Mhm.
stuff like that almost maybe a decade ago, 1033 was just like last couple of years or something, and it
Mhm.
didn't go through because of kind of differing opinions. But that's a classic example that the US government or legislators did not see a reason to kind of regulate the market as it's evolving. And why I bring that up, but in this case, or in this administration, with the passage of Genius Act and maybe the upcoming passage of Clarity Act around market structure, there is a concerted effort from the administration to maybe provide clarity, provide like real
Mhm.
guidance. And there was some issue with the previous Gary Gensler type regime, so maybe it's to address some of that. But I want to kind of hear your thoughts. Meaning, I know you mentioned Washington D.C. was kind of maybe not responsible, but definitely a catalyst or definitely an enabler for some of the innovations we're seeing with this financial service infrastructure, with stablecoins, and just the resurgence of crypto. So, what do you think the role is, and how do you see the role going forward?
In regards to what's going on in Washington D.C. with the regulators, you got the Federal Reserve, FDIC, OCC, getting them on board and having them understand better what this is, what this product is, and how they can help facilitate the usage of it in the United States is huge. You've got a lot of banks out there. Unlike a lot of countries in the United States, we have thousands of individual banks in the United States. I can't remember the exact number, but there's a lot of them. There's a lot of big ones, but there's also a lot of small ones. And for even a mid-sized bank to get in this industry, they're gonna need the guidance from the regulators so they don't get in trouble. Like most of these banks are not going to jump into this industry without some sort of guardrail, some guidance in getting this product out on the marketplace. So having that is huge. The Genius Act and then the clarity to help clean things up is going to be major in getting those institutions to give the guidance to the bankers who are interested but are skeptical on board. The U.S. financial industry is not. It's the largest in the world. It's the strongest. It's the most influential, and it's that way for a reason, because they have a strong backing of a very very competent US government that helps them be successful. And they need to be successful moving forward. Now, traditionally, that's taken a long time. As you said, some of these, getting up to date on some things Europe is doing takes time and, getting together. But for whatever reason, the like-mindedness in DC right now is very pro crypto, at least, on the stablecoin realm. And having that out there, having that guidance, that leadership in DC is going to help dictate how the banking industry transitions into it. Because I've said it for years. This is the future of banking. This is going to be what people want to use down the road. They want to use it now. They're going to use it later. Once people understand it, they're going to get it. But it's going to take that guidance from DC, really helping the traditional banks of the United States get to that point. It's just I don't think people real. I know traditionally crypto's been very open, loose, again, like you said, anti-regulation. But to get into the US financial system, you've got to embrace it, at least at some point, or you're probably going to fail or not even get off the ground. Because somebody's going to be there. You're going to have some customers out there who are going to get disgruntled and they're not going to have those guardrails to protect them. And at the end of the day, just like a traditional bank, our bottom line is protecting our consumers. That's our business model. We have to protect our consumers, and we need that guidance. We need that help from Washington, D.C.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting you say that. And you brought the point around community bank, the long tail of banking in as opposed to the top five or top
Hmm.
10 or top four. And it looks like what the administration and the current Congress is doing is to kind of factor in kind of Main Street objectives, not
Hmm.
just Wall Street objectives. That's kind of what I'm hearing. So it's a more kind of collaborative process, how it impacts kind of the mainstream, which is kind of the powerhouse of the country, if you will. And traditionally, some of these things have been kind of driven more institutionally, more Wall Street oriented or more Silicon Valley
Hmm.
oriented. Now, it looks like there's a more whole approach. Would you agree?
No, I would fully agree, and that's what we've been pushing ever since I've gotten here. Um, the big banks. I'm not going to name names, but the big banks could very easily come in here and make a Zelle-like product, let's say, which they make a lot of money on. But if you talk to a lot of bankers, it does cost a lot of money to utilize, and a lot of them, their customers don't necessarily utilize it. So, I mean, it's good for some of those banks who are invested in Zelle, but not so much for everybody else who is utilizing the product, who have to pay for the product. In my mind, in our mind, it's putting a product out there that not just benefits the larger banks who will definitely have the infrastructure to do it, but also give the opportunity for smaller and mid-sized banks to get into this realm. I mean, it's not fair if you have to have a large bank account, a large bank's bank account to get in this space. You should have the ability to use your community bank down the street in a cost effective way for them where they can make a profit, make money on it. They're not going to give out a product they're going to lose money on. But with crypto, it is so much less expensive than sending and utilizing traditional money, ACH, wires, and modes of that way. It's also faster. It's not fair for somebody in, rural Oklahoma or Nebraska where I'm at, you know, in a rural part of the state to not have that opportunity because their bank doesn't have, it's not big enough. It doesn't have the infrastructure. It doesn't have the demand. But if you make a product that is viable to everybody across the United States, the implementation will be much greater. And that's in my eyes the route to go in getting this product to marketplace.
Yeah. And it kind of aligns with, I think I've written a little bit on Trump doctrine and stuff. It aligns with kind of the populism, conservative populism, as opposed to establishment orientation that Trump has or the Trump presidencies have had. But let's not talk too much about that because I think we should have Congressman Flood or David Sachs come on and talk about that.
That's a fair statement.
Okay, let's get back into Telcoin.
Mhm.
Kind of about that getting more concrete. When people hear a digital asset bank, they might imagine anything from a crypto exchange to a custody shop. So, what are the actual products you're launching out of the bank, and who are they for?
So off the bat, we are issuing our stablecoin called EUSD. So when the time comes, we turn on our lights. Customers will be able to apply like they would a normal bank account. They will again. Let's go back to the regulation side. You will go through the same AML KYC with minor changes in regards to getting those people on board. We have a partner bank we partner up with for the fiat currency rails because we cannot technically hold fiat currency. We are stablecoin provider. And so they will be able to apply with us, get approved by us if everything goes well, by our third party bank. They'll be able to get approved by should be approved by them. Once that happens, they'll be able to transfer in money from whatever bank account they have into that bank. Once that happens, that'll start a process where we will take that, say $500 goes into their account, immediately gets put into a reserve account. That's where the reserve one-to-one backed by US dollars will go. So $500 goes in there. We will then immediately mint them $500 worth of stable coins into their individual wallet, which they will custody themselves. So,
Oh,
I mean,
very cool.
that's the simple process. That's the simple process of kind of how it's going to work. But yeah, off the get go, that is our product.
Yeah.
And we do have plans down the road for more things. The Nebraska Financial Innovation Act does allow us to get in digital lending at some point, and have other banking products we want to get into, such as like digital CDs and whatnot. But off the bat, just getting our stablecoins into the marketplace, into consumers' hands for utilization.
So that digital cash or that stable coins that gets on their wallet, um, how is it different than what they have today, say on their mobile banking app, and how does it help? And I know you talked about thinking about CDs and interest rates and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, but some of it might be how these things settle in the back. So tell us how it helps.
How it helps the consumers. So the biggest thing, so unlike today, where you go out there, you can buy USDC, USDT, those products, and you can utilize them throughout different channels. They The biggest thing I push is that they are pushed out by a state chartered digital asset depository institution. We are regulated. Within the banking industry, we are partnering up with banks. Right now we have one that we're partnering up with, but hopefully more down the road. And it'll give them the peace of mind, the safety and soundness of a traditional bank account, the safety that their reserves are kept in a particular bank that is covered, that is protected. It's not, randomly out there with a company that might be there in a year or two. But we the one area that I will say, and in regards to the regulation side, is that it will be a little bit higher for us when it comes to our exams, when it comes to how we're looked upon. Our reports are going to be a lot more frequent to the regulators than a traditional bank, just because of what we're doing. We're working in an industry that is 24/7, that is quick, that is fast. But again, it is safe, it is sound, and we've got the monitoring systems to help protect our customers through that.
Okay, that makes sense. And you have the kind of the backing of the US financial system, and for consumers or small business, it might be the community bank they already work with,
Hmm.
and the stuff that stays within the community, and it's very powerful. But can you walk us through some use cases, right? If you had to pick one or two hero journeys that really summarize why this matters, what would they be? Maybe it's a migrant worker sending money, kind of remittances use case, or a small merchant trying to get paid faster. So walk us through a couple of these scenarios.
I mean, one I like to use is, and it's an international one. Okay, so let's say you are buying an apartment. Let's go with Tokyo. Okay, in today's world, you go through your lender. Takes time. You got to transfer money. It could take days, weeks, sometimes a month, especially for international transmissions. Sending that money over, transferring it over, getting everything transferred to you. You use stable coins. You have a wallet. The person you're buying from has a wallet. You transfer that money. It's instantaneous. It's quick, and it costs a fraction of what it would for a traditional bank account in a traditional bank. I mean, that's just one very easy case use. In terms of transferring money to other people, a lot of people transfer money through Western Union. Western Union can take, again, takes a couple days, 2, 3 days if you're lucky. They take a fairly decent percentage off that transfer, whereas these transfers will be minuscule in comparison. Like it's not just faster, but it is cheaper. And like I'll tell everybody, it is also safe. What we're doing is safe and sound. The blockchain, as a banker, one of the big things that turned me on this, I think the eureka moment for me was understanding the blockchain as that online general ledger that is transparent and safe, sound. and I was looking into it not even from a financial when I first started studying it, just from a daily usage, using the blockchain within companies, industries to really track anything. It's very nice. That stable coin that we mint, you can follow that stablecoin through its entire life cycle from when we mint it in one person's wallet, it goes to another, and then when it comes back to us for redemption for that, hey, I want to turn this back into fiat currency, we burn it, we get rid of it, take that fiat currency out of the reserve account and give it to that customer. It's really amazing. And from a banking standpoint, and this is why I try to tell my banking friends, is that let's say I gave you $100 bill. We're on the street. I gave you $100 bill. Can you tell me where that $100 bill came from? Do you know where I got that $100 bill? No, no,
No.
you could. But if I gave you a stablecoin, you could go online and track the entire life of that. So as a financial institution, let's say you got a customer, and they've got some stablecoins coming in, and they track the life cycle of one of those stablecoins and went through, let's say, a bad actor, terrorist, who knows? You can easily go through, go to that customer, monitor that account, see what they're doing. Because that's not only keeping them safe, it's keeping that institution safe, which is best for the entire industry as a whole. So you don't have banks who have people funneling money in, bad money in. You can really monitor not just for the individual customer, but also your institution as itself. I think once bankers really understand that, I think you're going to see a lot of people, a lot of banking institutions really take a hard look at getting into this part of the industry.
Yeah, so you said something that was interesting. So AML or audit and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Some of these downstream functions in financial services or even in the business in terms of accounting and stuff. Given that the stable coins or the blockchain ledger has the provenance of where it has been or who has it been with, some of these things, especially if you combine it with AI, they can be super streamlined.
No, you are very, very correct. AI, I'm very interested with where AI is going right now. I don't have a background in AI, so I can't speak much of it, but I was actually at a symposium down in St. Louis a couple months ago that the St. Louis Fed put on, and they talked about using AI, different area, especially in lending, making the lending process easier, using different taxes with AI to streamline, make those approvals a lot faster and whatnot. So, I mean, it's definitely there, especially the onboarding process, getting people on board as a bank, making it a lot quicker with AI. I mean, AI is going to transform this industry, and I don't even think people, even the people that are in it, can really tell you exactly how it's going to be. But I think it's going to be impressive. There's a lot of kinks to work out. I know there's a lot of scariness to AI, but if you push that aside and really focus on what AI can do for us, it's going to be huge, especially for this industry.
Yeah, and especially with blockchain and or stablecoins and AI and agents, it could transform some of these things like money laundering or
Mhm.
accounting and other things that could totally change and streamline back office.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Using AI within your core in a safe, efficient manner could streamline a lot of things. It would take a lot of work off a lot of your staff, make things a lot easier. It's sky's the limit with AI right now,
Yeah.
100%, and it is moving very, very quickly.
Yeah. And the earlier point you made around the payments and it's instantaneous and a lower cost, right? That almost leads me to think that stable coins, even though it's crypto and it's minted, and the fact that it's on a blockchain or a distributed ledger and it's connected, these blockchains are connected, or the blockchains have different nodes, in essence, stablecoin become a pipe or a payment rail
Mhm.
in some ways. They sit right next to real-time payments or
Mhm.
ACH or wires and so on and so forth. And but offering a lot of efficiency, obviously you don't need the Fed in between like you need in the case of wires.
Yep.
So it doesn't have kind of a clearing or it kind of self clears or auto clears, or it's easier in some sense, programmatically clears. So it is a payment rail. Then and the payment rail's value comes in when it's connected to a lot of different endpoints.
Mhm.
So talk a little bit about that with Telcoin. I know you've been around since 2017 and you built a lot of endpoints,
Mhm.
especially with your Telcoin, the previous coin that you launched. So talk a little bit about the acceptance of the network.
So when you say acceptance in a network, you mean in regards to other users utilizing us, other companies utilizing us, that type of thing.
Yes,
We are in constant contact with not just banks but other fintechs, blockchains. Just kind of working on all that, and that is on the engineering end, though I will say so. My expertise is not back there,
sure.
and I'm not on the sales side of that. But we are in constant contact. We have a lot of interest from a lot of different groups and a lot of different industries in the potential use of this. You've got a lot of major, maybe not at the smaller end, but you've got a lot of major corporations that deal with industries across the globe and sending money back and forth. Again, we say that it takes time, but depending on what country you're from, where in the globe you're from, that could also be very skeptical on whether you're going to get paid fully for your products you serve and whatnot. So bringing this into the financial ecosystem, not just locally but globally, is raising a lot of eyebrows in terms of what could this possibly do for us individually across the United States and globe. I mean, does that make sense? I mean, did I answer that
Yeah,
okay? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Yeah,
totally,
yeah.
totally.
Mhm.
And it looks like you target some of the community banks. So if a community banking CEO or senior executive is listening to this and thinking this sounds interesting, but I'm worried about regulators and worried about the board. And I know Nebraska had the legislation, the Nebraska state regulator, but some of the other regulators might still be kind of thinking about these things. I know there's the Genius Act at the federal level, but if they're worried about this and they don't know, how do you de-risk that conversation for them?
How do we de-risk the conversation in regards to their concerns? That's a really good question. The biggest thing, and it goes back to the start of this whole conversation, is that everything we're doing is online within the Nebraska Department of Banking and Finance. If they have questions regarding us as an institution, that's the first place I would go if I was them. We show them our processes. If they want to reach out, talk to us, we have presentations that we give them in regards to how our flows go, in regards to our guardrails, the different contractors we have in regards to our ACHs, our cores, all that stuff. We can walk through everything through them, how our core will interact with their, because we do have a core. We do have a core system within Digital Asset Depository Institution, how that will interact with theirs, what they need to do on their end. And honestly, just kind of give them peace of mind in regards to the biggest thing I hear about is the staffing aspect. Like what will this take in our bank? Is it one of those things we just plug in, turn on, everything's okay? Or is it something more along the lines of, okay, we do this, but we need to add a few more staff? And you will. Most banks are probably going to have separate staff depending on the size of your bank, the influx to deal with this, to understand this, because it is different enough from a traditional banking ledger that you can, do certain times of the day or once a day. And you need people to understand, how the blockchain works, how stablecoins work, all that stuff. Because there are programs that we will set up to work with them that they're going to have to understand. But here's the thing: you do something like this in Nebraska or whatever state, like I said at the beginning, they're treating this like a de novo. Okay. So even a mid-sized bank, you're going to set up an entire department a lot of times to even get this off the ground because it is still a lift. I don't want it to sound like this is an easy thing to do, but that's where groups, specifically as Telcoin, can come in. We can give a lot of that outside support to make their life easier on their end, to help get them up and running. So their customers, not just their current customers, so that their customers can get online, use stablecoins, get on the blockchain, but also give them another product in their quiver to get new customers. That I think that's the next thing with banking, how bankers would want to get into this is like, how can we utilize this product with our customers? Will our customers want it? Can it is in our area of the country or state or wherever, is there a need for this? And do we want to do the lift? Well, we don't want to do it ourselves. Let's partner up with somebody like Telcoin.
Right,
We can
right.
come in there, do that, like because it can be a lift. But when it comes, to I understand. I've been on a bank board, I've been C-suite at a bank. The concerns really come down to the regulatory side. That's what it starts out with. And then it comes
Right.
down to compliance. Because I walked into banks before telling them our story, telling them like what we need, what they would need, and the compliance officer's eyes just get huge. Because it's just an entirely different beast, but we can take care of a lot of that. And once they understand that, I think that's when you're going to see a lot of adoption moving forward. It's not as hard as I think people realize. It's just wrapping their heads around it right now.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's powerful. You talked about Circle and USDT and how kind of alignment with the bank can kind of help with the adoption. But how do you see Telcoin positioning relative to the big incumbents, the mega banks, the card networks, and also now the big tech wallets, who are all experimenting with new rails?
Mhm.
Is the goal to compete, partner, or live in different layers of the stack?
You know what? I think we have yet to see. I think there's definitely future in partnering, getting that to the point to where, the ecosystem is there to where the demand is there to where, we have one of the better products out there where the big banks and want to look at us and say, okay, we can either do our own thing or we can possibly partner up with Tel, or there's just different areas within the ecosystem. I think you bring up a great point. I don't have an answer for that right now. I think the opportunities are kind of endless on how this whole industry is gonna move forward within itself.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
tough question. I like it. That's a good one.
Yeah, and I think like you have that main street focus, you have
Mhm.
the community banking as kind of your distribution channel, and kind of helping them. They're sometimes behind the A ball, right? Because of their capital structure and their size and their capacity. They can't always keep up with everything that's going on, especially on the innovation and technology development. And I think your model can bridge that gap, and they do serve their own clients, so you could kind of live and enable a different segment, compared to say the big tech and the big mega banks, but TBD, or to be seen as to how this
Mhm.
evolves.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's still so early in this,
Yeah, yeah,
But either way, I believe that the American consumer will win in the end because of the
yeah.
usage of this.
Yeah, totally. And
Hmm.
that's the best part. So
Hmm.
we talked a bit about AI earlier in the thread, but zooming back out, it's just not that the rails are going unchanged. We've also got this wave of AI agents that can
Hmm.
make decisions, move money on behalf of the users, agentic commerce, agentic banking. There's a lot of developments. Agentic commerce obviously has a little bit more traction. So, from where you sit, how do you see AI intersecting with what Telcoin is building? Are there early agentic use cases that you think will become real on your rails?
I think as time goes on, we will be using as a company AI more and more moving forward, probably specifically on the back end, engineering and whatnot. I talk to our engineers on a fairly regular basis. Can't say I understand a lot of what they say. I'm not an engineer. That's a different world. But when it comes to AI, I can see, at least on the back end, with us and probably many other like-minded companies, it is going to be utilized more and more, just because AI is moving at a pace where you're going to be left behind if you don't utilize it, within your infrastructure. When it comes to developing coding, all that stuff, AI is becoming very influential, and I'm seeing it on a daily basis with us. But it's, understanding AI and really knowing the guardrails and the safety around it and how safe, how you can utilize, to what extent you can use AI. And I think that extent's going to grow as time goes on.
Okay. So, in a similar vein, if I ask you to take out your crystal ball, Patrick, what do you think about the next 5 or 10 years, not just the next couple of years, um, of financial infrastructure, banking in general? What are one or two big shifts you think people still underestimate, or we haven't surfaced yet in the collective psyche of what we're talking about?
I think what's going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years is that stablecoins are going to be coming into the marketplace at a faster rate than people realize. I like to bring it in, similar to like the credit cards or debit cards back in the 80s with banking. People were very afraid of them, thinking cash was going away. Cash did not go away. Checks have not gone away, even though they're used less and less every day. but they're just another product in the marketplace. So over the next few years, I see stablecoins coming in and being a new product for everyday people to use on a regular basis. Down the road farther, I see that stablecoin market taking up more and more of the marketplace. I mean, cash is not going away, fiat currency is not going away, but this is really just a digital cash representation of that fiat currency. And I think the ease of use, the safety and soundness of it will just take hold, not just within the industry, the banking industry, financial industries. I'll put credit unions in there too. You know, all these. There's a lot of opportunities for a lot of these institutions to utilize them, but also just in the American public, point of sale transactions using stablecoins, taking out your phone, taking out your wallet, paying immediately with stablecoins. You're going to see more and more usage cases becoming popular. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be a part of us like anything else right now. I mean, what was it, say 5, 7 years ago? Were you using Apple Pay much? If you have an Apple Wallet or whatever Google has, Android, were you using that very much? Probably not. Now we use it all the time. I know people, use that option all the time. That's how fast this is going. So I think the integration is going to be fairly quick. The finalization of clarity in DC and really getting those federal regulators on board, not just in terms of implementation, but giving us the banking community guidance is going to be a major player in that. I think once that becomes finalized, you're going to see a lot of this industry just take off.
Wow. That's a big prediction, a big prophecy. So, stablecoins is the card moment of the 80s, and
Hmm.
more recently, the wallet moment of the 2010s, perhaps.
Hmm.
So that's big. It's going to be big. It'll shift consumer behavior. It'll shift infrastructure, obviously, which we're
Hmm.
talking about, and there will be a lot of new value added. Maybe the loyalty and payments, everything will kind of intersect, and there'll be like creative new apps built on top of the stable coins.
Hmm.
So that's big, Patrick, and you're pioneering the shift.
We're definitely trying to, that's for sure.
That's great. That's great. Um, I've been doing this in a few shows now, kind of a lightning round. So are you
Mhm.
ready? Can I and just off the cuff answer whatever comes to mind? So let's do a quick lightning round, short question, short answers. Are you
Happy
ready,
to.
Patrick?
I'm looking forward to this.
Okay. What's one misconception about digital asset banks you'd love to clear up?
I think the big one just right away is that we are not FDIC insured. A lot of people think bank, they think charter, they think, being regulated, we are automatically FDIC insured. We are not FDIC insured. Our partner banks are, which is why fiat currency stays with them. They have that protection. Stablecoins are not FDIC insured.
Gotcha. But still, people when they use use your product, they're still through your partner banks. They're safe, or they are safe
Mhm.
to the levels the FDIC.
But
No,
Telcoin
that's
is
it.
also a bank, not FDIC insured.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
That's something that's been brought up quite a bit over the last year, especially within our community, the Telcoin community. People are, follow us and whatnot. We do not have FDIC insurance. There's no such thing as that as of yet. Hopefully someday, but as of now, nothing.
Gotcha. So a metric you watch that traditional bankers probably don't have on their dashboard yet.
Say that one more time.
So a metric or KPI or anything you
Hmm.
measure around adoption or rate or velocity or anything that you watch that traditional bankers, like say a community bank, does
Hmm.
not have it on their dashboard yet.
The biggest thing I would say is that's a good one. Because it's been long enough for me as a traditional banker to kind of think of, okay, what do I look at now that I didn't before? Um, I would say the simplest way is whatever periodicals you do, whether it's Wall Street Journal, The Economist, Bloomberg, American Banker, really start paying attention on a regular basis to their fintech side. You really want to see what the fintech community is doing right now, not just in regards to stablecoins, but stablecoin adjacent. Like what can your fintech partnerships do for you in this realm? Because things are moving very, very quickly, and these fintech companies are bringing new products out to the marketplace that would help you out more than you probably realize because you don't necessarily understand it. I would say really start paying attention to those. would be the big thing is something I didn't necessarily do because I was as a traditional banker, you're very focused on your model and what you're doing and keeping that safe and sound and giving the best product you can for your customers. But really keeping an eye on the fintech realm, which I think a lot of bankers do anymore, that would be the biggest thing I would say is really just keep an eye on those trade association periodicals, the mainstream ones, to really see what's going on a regular basis. If as long as you do that, I think you'll be okay.
Yeah, or tune into this show because we
There
cover.
you go. Yes, exactly. Listen to this. Keep listening to these. And honestly, that's another thing. A lot of this information is done through podcasts like yours anymore. It's the
Yeah,
best way. You don't have to sit down and read it. You can do it while you're at the gym, driving to work, putting your kids down to bed. I mean,
yeah,
it's like, podcasts are the new medium to get information. We know that. And
yeah,
yeah, yeah, really,
and there's a
and
little
share.
bit.
It's easy to share with your friends. You have other people in the industry, send that podcast, and again, they're not terribly long most of the time, and you'll get more information out of those than you will a 3-second read in some of these papers.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that independence aspect, right? The independence media as opposed to kind of a little tailored and establishment media. So I think
Mhm.
there's some good podcasts out there.
Mhm.
Um, the most surprising thing, I know you did de novo charter, and several of the big ones actually acquired charter, so they acquired other banks, so to speak, and
Mhm.
hence got a charter. I think there's some like I want to say Varo Bank, they probably did de novo, but the most surprising thing you learned going through the charter process.
Biggest thing I learned going through the charter process would probably be just, I mean, immediate. I'll give you a couple answers. The biggest one I would say is just the scale that you have to put into in terms of work just to do the application and business plan to get accepted. Starting a bank in the United States is not easy. To be frank, and it's considerably harder than it was before the 2008 financial crisis. Since the 2008 financial crisis, there's only been a handful of de novo charters given out. More so recently, but it's just because of the regulatory environment, it's been tough. Outside of that, understanding probably the biggest thing is my understanding of just the crypto space as a whole. The different products out there. I mean, it is so. When you first hear crypto, you think Bitcoin, Ethereum, basic things like that. Once you understand what crypto is, it is such a broad sphere. There are so many different aspects to crypto, so many different areas to get into, areas that don't even touch. Like the opportunities within crypto are huge, and we're in very much. You mentioned Wild West earlier. I don't even consider this Wild West. I still feel like we're Lewis and Clark going up the Missouri River. Like we haven't even hit the Wild West yet. You know, so I mean, the opportunities are endless is probably the biggest thing I came out. Just under crypto, the crypto space is vast. Let's just leave
Yeah,
it at that. It is
it is.
vast.
Yeah, it is. So if Telcoin succeeds, what's one, and it will, what's one everyday action a normal user does in 2030 that quietly runs on your rails?
Probably the transferring of stablecoins in between wallets.
Hmm.
Hopefully our wallet is big enough, and and they're utilizing EUSD. They're using our stablecoin. That's the biggest thing I see in 2030 is that we are, if not we're at the very least a major player in the entire game.
So the Zelle and Venmo next gen is powered by Telcoin, and it's programmatic. It's maybe autonomous, right? Like you have lunch with someone and you have to pay. You don't have to go to Zelle or Venmo. You go to the Telcoin wallet or wallet powered by Telcoin. It kind of figures out how much you need to pay and settles on stablecoins or something like
I
that.
I would love that. That is a goal. Like that would be wonderful if at 2030 we were doing that.
Yeah, yeah, I think you will be. And the thing would be that it'd be supported for all credit unions and community banks and so on.
Hmm.
So it'll be
Hmm.
available to the masses through the brands they trust.
Exactly.
So last but not least, if someone's listening wants to collaborate, who should reach out first? Community banks, telcos, fintech founders, or policymakers?
All of them. We will take, I want all of them. We want the traditional banks to help them understand, to help them adapt us. We need the fintechs so they know how to work with us, how their products can interact with ours, and then the policymakers, of course. I will take a call from any policymaker across the country. More than happy to talk through our process, what we see in it, the positives, the negatives. They they all matter. Everybody you mentioned matters. I know that's not a great answer. It's not the answer necessarily you want, but they should all be calling us. They
No,
should
that's
all be
that's a good
reaching out to
answer.
us.
Yeah,
They
that's
should
a good
all be
answer.
reaching out to us. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a good answer. I mean, you can serve with your infrastructure you're building, but you've gone
Mhm.
through a process, and maybe other states outside of Nebraska that are looking to kind of do something like what Nebraska and even Wyoming earlier has done. You could be a good kind of sounding board to kind of learn the process and stuff. Looks like you have a good broad perspective
Mhm.
and can advise them and maybe help them with what you're building as well. Patrick, this has been great. We've gone from Telcoin's evolution from a telco plus crypto experiment to a regulated digital asset bank to the concrete products you're launching, digital cash, remittances, partner rails, to how this all fits into a bigger shift in the financial infrastructures where banks, telcos, and fintechs share a programmable real time backbone. But before we close, what's the one thing you want listeners to remember about Telcoin and this new category of digital asset banks?
I would want everybody to know that we are on the forefront of the digital asset revolution, if you will, the implementation in the United States. And to anybody who's interested, please go to telco.in, telco.in, or look me up or any one of our people up on LinkedIn. Also on Twitter if you want. But we're on all major social media platforms. Please come check us out, find out what our products are, see what we can do for you, because we are more than happy to help anybody who's more than willing to look into us.
Okay, that's Patrick Gerhart, and he's on LinkedIn and other social media. And telco.in is where you can learn more about Telcoin. That's a smart kind of website because it gets your full name with the dot in between. So Patrick, thank you again for joining us on FinTech Talk. To our listeners, if you're a bank, a telco, a fintech founder, or just someone curious about where money and infrastructure are headed, I hope this gave you a clear window into one of the experiments shaping that future. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, share, and leave a rating. It really helps more people find these conversations. Until next time, I'm Patty. Stay curious and keep building the future of finance. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you. You have a wonderful day.